Learning scales is a fundamental task. As guitar players, we start out with a couple. Maybe it's the pentatonic scale, maybe you learn the major scale, maybe the minor scale, maybe Dorian. It doesn't really matter. We just have a few that we start out with, right? There are hundreds, if not thousands of scales based on the Western tonality, the 12-tone Western musical system. So it leaves you with a library of scales to learn, a body of knowledge left to learn that's really, really large, which leaves us in a position of saying, well, I'm not going to ever learn all the scales, so why even bother? And that's a little unfortunate, because much more valuable than knowing every single scale is having a reliable method to be able to play any scale. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris. Today you will learn how to play any scale. Now, again, we're just going to be looking at the Western scales, right? Scales made on the Western system, half steps and whole steps, tuned in this way, right? Because those esoteric scales based on different sort of tonalities or different temperaments, that's a bit more advanced. We're going to work on a tool to just get you from a couple of scales, the pentatonic and maybe the major scale, to being able to incorporate any scale. And that's the tool we're going to focus on today. Why are we doing this? You may ask yourself, you may ask me. We are on a journey, you and I. We are on a journey to become the best guitar players we can become, right? That is independent of style and genre. It doesn't matter if you're a jazz player, a metal player, a folk player, a country player, a funk player. It doesn't matter. The journey we're on is based on one fundamental feedback loop, and that is turning your musical preference, I like this kind of music, into your musical capability. I can now play that kind of music. Any music you ever hear is based on a tonality, and tonalities are built using scales. Chords come from scales. Chords make up chord progressions, right? It's all based on this DNA of the scale, right? So when you hear something you like, you're hearing a tonality. You're hearing the information from a scale. Even if there are chord changes and scale changes in there, if you prefer them, you should be able to figure them out, right? So getting a tool by which you can take any one of those preferences, ooh, I really like the way that sounds. What scale is that being constructed from? And put it on the neck. That's why we're doing this, right? Because it completes that feedback loop. It becomes a primary tool to change your musical preference into your musical capability. Okay, so we're going to zoom in. We're going to map the major scale to the fretboard again, because it's the fundamental sort of like ruler of all things. All of the stuff we learn in music is related to the major scale, relatable to that formula. We're going to map that on the fretboard again, and then we're going to import new scale formulas. And using those formulas against the major scale, we're going to transform the scale we already know into the new scale using those new formulas, right? It's a really, really cool method, and it's easy to understand. Let's zoom in and I'll show you how it works. Learning any scale, really? Yes. We're going to build a tool that you can play any scale that you come across. We're going to use the major scale. There's a big surprise. This is the A major scale using a 3-note per string variation. We're going to use that variation because it's going to be easier to see us building these new scales. We're going to be importing new formulas and sort of overlaying them and taking the major scale and altering it into that new scale. So first thing we're going to do is put these numbers down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And just for the heck of it, the fret numbers are on the E string, 5, 7, 9, A string, 5, 7, 9, D string, 6, 7. So get that under your fingers because we're going to be using that to turn into the other scales. Okay, so there's the numbers. Now, how do we turn this into another scale? All we really need to do is know the new scale's formula, and we can apply it to this construct, right? So major is root 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, root. Let's just pick one. I'm going to pick an easy one that only has a single alteration, because we're going to take these notes and we're going to be altering them and moving them around, okay? So the first one we're going to do is called Lydian. The Lydian is the fourth of the major scale modes, and Lydian is simply root 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, root. Root 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, root. So a cool sounding scale. Builds this really cool chord. We just took the 4 and we sharped it. What does that mean, sharp? Sharp means increase in pitch, so you're pushing it up the neck by a half step. When you use a sharp 4, you're taking the 4 and you're moving it up. Now we're going to look at one that has a flat note in it. Flat means reduce the pitch, take it down a half step. Here's Mixolydian. Same exact thing, only it has a flat 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. That builds the dominant chord. It's a cool sounding scale. Just listen to it in relation to the major scale. Here's that same scale with the flat 7, Mixolydian. So you're getting the sound of these scales in your head, and you're only using the formulas to alter the major scale. Okay, now let's do one that alters more than just one note. So the first one of these is going to be harmonic minor. Here's the formula for harmonic minor. So as you can see, it reduces the 3 and the 6. So now we have 2 notes to change. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, normal 7, root. What a cool sounding scale. Builds this really cool minor chord with a major 7 in it. Right? So that formula changes 2 of the notes, right? If we change one more of the note, we come to regular old minor. So this is Aeolian or natural minor, just A minor. Has a flat 3, a flat 6, and a flat 7. It looks like this. Fits over a regular minor chord, builds a regular minor triad. So now we've taken this one major scale and we've changed it into all these other scales, right? Very cool. Okay, let's pick a scale from outer space. Here's one called Phrygian dominant. What the heck is that? Here's the formula for Phrygian dominant. Root, flat 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. Here's what it looks like. Whoa, look at that. 1, flat 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, root. That's a weird scale, right? Why would we not want to know this scale? It doesn't really matter. Maybe you don't like the scale. Maybe you heard it on Come Out to Play by Offspring. This is an old song released in the 90s. They use Phrygian dominant. That's interesting, right? If that's your musical preference, you can turn it into your capability. Phrygian dominant. Maybe it's not for everybody, but now you can tell. Now you can put it on the fretboard and at least you know. You can play it and you can hear it, and then you can make a decision. I don't know if I like it or not. Maybe I don't like it. Maybe I love it. You can figure that out for yourself. Now, what about our pentatonic scales? Let's make sure that this works for scales that don't have 7 notes but have less or more than 7 notes. Here is the minor pentatonic scale. Root, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7. Root, flat 3, right? Because we have the major scale goes 1, 2, 3, so flat 3 is right here. Root, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, root. Works perfectly fine, right? Because you're just using those notes from the major scale. Works perfectly. What about the major pentatonic scale? The major pentatonic scale is root 2, 3, 5, 6. Root 2, 3, 5, 6. Root. Major pentatonic works perfectly. We're just seeing that major scale and we're altering it using those formulas. Any formula, any scale formula you come across, you can stick it on this major scale, change the major scale, alter the major scale to play any scale you ever hear. This is a tool that allows you to bring yourself closer to turning your musical preference into your musical capability. Okay, there you have it. You don't have to learn every single scale, but you really should be able to learn how to play any scale you need, right? To complete that feedback loop from musical preference into musical capability. You can do that with this method. Now you will run across scales, scale formulas that are written in intervals. Whole step, half step, whole step, minor third, half step, whatever, right? That's different than these numbers. However, it is exactly the same context. It refers to the exact same thing. Here's the interval pattern for the major scale. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. That's the same thing. Whole step, half step. Whole step, half step. So when you see a scale that's mapped in intervals, you can use that formula to apply the formula and transform that major scale again into any scale you find. Okay, I've tabbed this whole thing out, including all the examples here today, and I've also included some extra formulas for some scales I didn't cover, some pretty esoteric stuff, some cool things. If you're interested in that and you want the tabs, head on over to Patreon. That's linked in the description below. And if you do decide to support the channel, I thank you in advance. Okay, give a person a fish, feed them for a day. Teach a person to fish, feed them for a lifetime. I've just given you a tool that you can use for the rest of your journey to incorporate any new scale. Go forward. I challenge you to learn a few new scales this week, maybe even tonight. All right, I hope you enjoy this. I hope you find it interesting, and I'll see you next time.